Before criminals undergo an execution where they end their life forever, there are those who plead and beg for another chance at life, and those who use their last chance to scorn at the general public. It is a usual custom for condemned criminals to grab the spotlight one last time and make a memorable statement to the public with his or their final words. It could either be a chilling statement aimed at frightening or deeply disturbing those standing as witnesses of their death, or even a light-hearted statement just to make a notable appearance and get a few laughs out of it. Criminals throughout the years have had some pretty amazing things to say in the minutes just before their last breath. Some of these statements are their way of giving a final slap in the face to society. Here are the last words of 10 death row prisoners who left some of the most disturbing and haunting statements before their plugs were pulled. First up, we have number 1, John Wayne Gacy. Last words, kiss my ass. John Wayne Gacy was charged and arrested due to the rape and murder of approximately 33 men between the years 1972 and 1978. What's even more disturbing is that he worked the jobs as a children's party entertainer. He went from being known as a children's party entertainer to being referred to as a killer clown because of all the parties he showed up at in his clown suit and face full of creepy clown makeup. On May 10, 1994, Gacy was executed by lethal injection right after the clock struck 12. On being asked if he had any last words before his death, Gacy chose to use this opportunity to scorn and say, "Kiss my ass." Number 2, Aileen Wuornos. Last words, "I'd just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day, with Jesus June 6th. Like the movie, big mothership and all, I'll be back." Aileen Wuornos was known to have been abandoned by her parents at a very fragile age. She worked as a prostitute and began robbing people to find ways to make a living for herself, and this was only around the time she became a teenager. Between the years 1989 and 1990, Wuornos shot, murdered, and robbed a total of around 6 men. After being convicted and put through trials in 1991, she was given 6 death sentences. But that wasn't all. She also earned herself the inaccurate label by the press of being the first ever female serial killer in America. Number 3, Peter Curtin. Last words, "Tell me, after my head has been chopped off, will I still be able to hear, at least for a moment, the sound of my own blood gushing from the stump of my neck? That would be a pleasure to end all pleasures." Commonly known as the Vampire of Dusseldorf, Peter Curtin is believed to have murdered around 60 people in Germany. His murders were unbelievably vicious, like that of a wild beast. He beat and raped, and is even known to have drunk the blood of at least one of his victims. Before Curtin was executed by guillotine on July 2, 1931, his last words sure made those listening nauseous and sent chills down their spines. Number 4, John Spankelink. Last words, capital punishment. They without the capital get the punishment. A drifter convicted of killing a traveling companion, John Spankelink, claimed his actions were only a method of self-defense. Along with that, he also earned the title of the first man put to be executed in Florida after the U.S. Supreme Court put forth capital punishment in 1976. Number 5, Gary Gilmore. Last words, "Let's do it." Charged and convicted of murdering a motel manager, Gary Gilmore was arrested in Utah on January 17, 1977. He was executed by a volunteer firing squad and also became the first person to be executed after the U.S. had put forth the death penalty in 1976. Something extraordinary about Gilmore is that even though he opted to donate his organs, after a while after his execution, 2 people gladly received his donated corneas. Another thing that gained Gilmore a good amount of fame is when advertising executive Dan Whedon praised Gilmore's parting words, which he surprisingly used for Nike's tagline. Yes, the famous tagline for Nike was actually spoken first by an inmate before his very death. Number 6, Carl Panzram. Last words, "In my lifetime, I have murdered 21 human beings. I have committed thousands of burglaries, robberies, larcenies, arsons, and last but not least, I have committed sodomy on more than 1,000 male human beings. For all these things, I am not in the least bit sorry." Talk about being shameless. Carl Panzram was a criminal in not one but several aspects. He was a serial killer, rapist, arsonist, and even into burglary. Fortunately, the police put him behind bars and executed him by hanging. He was hanged on the 5th of September 1930. Without even expressing an ounce of guilt for his crimes and wrongdoings, he completely refused to appeal his sentence. What makes it worse is he even threatened to murder those members of human rights groups who vouched to appeal on his behalf. Showing no remorse until the very end, Panzram shamelessly yelled these words at his executioner. "Hurry it up, you Hoosier bastard. I could hang a dozen men while you're screwing around." Number 7. Timothy McVeigh. Last words. "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." Best known as the Oklahoma City bomber, Timothy McVeigh was the evil mind behind setting a bomb which killed 149 adults and 19 children at the federal building in Oklahoma City. One of the most tragic incidents to occur in Oklahoma was on April 19, 1995. McVeigh had nothing much to say prior to being executed by lethal injection in 2001 in Indiana. Though he stayed absolutely silent, he did leave a statement in writing quoting the last few lines of a famous poem called Invictus, written by the poet Sir William Ernest Henley. "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." Number 8. Thomas J. Grasso. Last words. "I did not get my SpaghettiOs. I got spaghetti. I want the press to know this." Thomas J. Grasso was another criminal who earned the death penalty and was executed by lethal injection in Oklahoma for allegedly suffocating and strangling a poor 87-year-old woman to death. This incident took place on Christmas Eve, and he strangled the woman to death with her own Christmas lights. All this just so he could rob her television and a mere $12. There's a funny rule in the US for prisoners who are about to be executed. For those on death row, they're given a chance to pick anything they would like to eat as their very last meal during their lifetime. Just a little bit of humanity is shown to them before they're executed. Grasso sure didn't want to miss out on this chance. His last meal request could equate to a whole party buffet. He asked for 2 dozen steamed mussels, 2 dozen steamed clams, seasoned by a wedge of lemon, a double cheeseburger from Burger King specifically, a half dozen barbecued spare ribs, 2 strawberry milkshakes, 1/2 of a pumpkin pie with whipped cream, diced strawberries, and to top it all off, a 16-ounce can of SpaghettiOs with meatballs, of course, all served at room temperature. Sadly though, he received nearly every item he demanded. The variety of things he ordered left the waiters confused, and the kitchen staff happened to go wrong with the SpaghettiOs. Instead, they served him spaghetti, hence his last few words. Number 9. Robert Alton Harris. Last words. "You can be a king or a street sweeper, but everyone dances with the Grim Reaper." Robert Alton Harris was convicted of murdering 2 young teen boys. He was the first person to be executed in the year 1992 in the state of California after several years. He made a quite funny choice for his last words. They were a misquote from the film Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, and it sure did get him some recognition. Number 10. Tom Blackjack Ketchum. Last words. "I'll be in hell before you start breakfast, boys. Let her rip." After a failed train robbery, Tom Blackjack Ketchum, a very well-known outlaw at the time, was finally arrested and sentenced to death by hanging. Prior to his death, uttered these words, "I'll be in hell before you start breakfast, boys. Let her rip." And right after the execution, it was horribly mishandled to the point where the noose cut his entire head off of his body. That's all for today's video, folks. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.